All right, boys and girls, chapter 5 of Skylark. Here we go. All right, here comes your RFO question. It's a short chapter. The question is, what trouble are the people in right now? So the people in their town and area, okay? And a bonus question is, why does Maggie tell Sarah that Sarah just doesn't understand what they're going through? All right, here we go. Chapter 5. Each day, Papa dropped a rope with a stone down the well to measure the water level. It is past the mark. Is it past the mark? Sarah didn't dare ask. Papa nodded. How much, Jacob? Papa held out his hand a foot apart. Caleb and I got up into the wagon to go to town. Soon we're going to have to haul water for the animals, said Papa. Well, we can do that, said Sarah. We'll have to measure out our own water, said Papa as he climbed up. But we already do that, Jacob. Papa looked down at Sarah. We'll have to use less. Sarah stared at Papa and then got up to sit next to him. We can do that too, she said firmly. We drove off down the road, and after a while, Caleb poked his head between Sarah and Papa. Papa looked at him. So, Caleb? I put the glass on the post, said Caleb. Papa nodded, but he didn't say anything. To measure the rain when it comes, Caleb added. Well, thank you for that, said Papa. You're welcome, said Caleb, happily. He sat back in the wagon and he folded his arms, and Papa smiled. All the way to town, I looked for green, but as far as I could see, the fields were brown. The wheat fields were dry, turkey vultures circled in the distance, and there was no green. Everything seemed slow in town, as if the heat had taken over. Papa left the wagon in the shade of the greenery and slowly unloaded his last bags of grain from the wagon. Slowly, he walked inside. Mrs. Parkley's store was cool. Rose and Violet were there, and Rose was carrying Tom, who smiled at me. But Maggie had her arms around Carolyn, who was crying. Carolyn, what's wrong? Maggie? Asked Sarah. Their well is dry, Maggie said softly. Carolyn, said Sarah, what can we do? There's nothing to do, Carolyn said, drying her tears. We've already packed up. Packed up? Said Sarah, shocked. Where will you go? They have family, said Maggie. Carolyn took her packages and went to the door. She turned suddenly. Her face was sad. Joseph said, we'll come back, she said. But we won't. I know we won't. She opened the door and she left. Maggie walked over to the door and she looked out. Surely we can do something, Sarah said. We could haul water, Maggie. We could all work harder. Sarah's voice grew louder, and Caleb moved closer to her. You can't just give up, said Sarah. You just can't give up everything you've worked for. Maggie whirled around. Her face was angry. You don't know how hard this is, Sarah, she said angrily. You haven't been in this kind of trouble before. Sarah stared at Maggie and then at the others in the store. Maggie reached over and she took Sarah's hand. She opened the door and she pulled her outside. I watched the two of them cross the dusty street. Maggie's arms went around Sarah, but they kept walking. Papa came out from the greenery and he watched them too, Matthew beside them. Is Sarah angry? Asked Caleb. I looked down at his worried face. No, I said, Sarah's not angry. Caleb sighed. Sarah likes to make things right, he said. We watched without speaking, and then Joseph and Carolyn's wagon passed, all packed up with chairs and clothes and cupboards, pots and pans, all tied on. Sarah turned to watch it, and Papa watched too from across the street, and then the wagon turned a corner and was gone. The end of chapter 5.